Who?
What?
When?
Where?
Why?
How? Okay, here we go, bringing on another question.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bad habit of just starting the conversation without introducing ourselves. So I wrote us a little script.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I'm Foennix.
And I'm Will, your dad.
Yeah. And before we start off anything, I have contracted the seasonal sickness, so there will be coughing and sneezing in this.
Happy spring, yay!
Yay! Enough getting sick.
Coughing, sneezing, tissues, maybe blowing the nose.
Maybe.
We'll see. Should I say the script even though we just introduced ourselves anyway?
Yeah.
Welcome to Bring On the Questions, where Phoenix and I, Will, that's my name, and I'm also her dad, would take some random questions we come up with and attempt to answer it the best way we can. It's a nice little intro that we didn't have in our first episodes. We will strive to say it or something like it going forward. We'll also try and be a little more energetic because I think we need to.
Yeah.
Energetic and sick. Look at you go. Feeling energetic?
No.
All right, we'll keep going. Real quick, before we get into the question of the show, we want to let everyone know that the show can be found on Spotify and YouTube so far. Both of them, just search for Bring On the Questions, and we'll be there. In due time, the show will be found anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll try to make sure all the links are available on our Linktree page. You ever went to a Linktree? No? Never checked one out? It's just one page that has a bunch of links. So I started it. It's Linktree. I guess you can go to linktree.com/BOTQS, or you can go to linktr.ee/BOTQS. And there it'll have the links to our stuff. So I made us an X, or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, and just started following a bunch of podcasts and a bunch of random things. And different people have already replied to a couple things they liked and shared our links. So the Twitter's on there, the YouTube's on there, or X, right? And the Spotify's on there so far. And as we upload episodes to Spotify, I expect Spotify will notify us, or I'll just start hunting down where in the podcast universe the podcast lives. Because I don't know if you're aware, but you can get podcasts from so many different places. Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Sirius?
YouTube Music.
Yep, YouTube Music. Amazon Music has podcasts.
Are they on Pandora?
Yep. I think Stitcher is still a thing. I don't know if it was I was not sure if it was a thing for a while. I think it's still a thing. Podbean is another one. Good Pods.
Probably TikTok. There's got to be at least skits of podcasts on there.
I think we'll have to make a TikTok and put these clips on there. There's so many. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Just start chipping away at the different things, putting it up. I know there's other podcast things. Podchaser. Podchaser's another one. Podchaser.com. There's so many. Generally, they're all audio. I don't know which ones are actually. Spotify will do video. YouTube, obviously video. But I don't know if any of the other ones I mentioned do video in any fashion. Usually it's just audio.
YouTube Music might do a video.
Really? When I say YouTube, I just kind of put that all under the same thing. YouTube Music. Usually, I think if you can get it on YouTube Music, you can get it on standard YouTube. But I don't know if it goes the other way.
I don't know.
Who knows? Okay, moving on. And so, Miss Phœnix, what question are we attempting to answer in this episode?
What weighs more, light or shadow?
And
before we dig into anything deep,
okay,
I feel as if I've kind of answered this question myself, since I have said that since light is made up of photons and darkness is the absence of light, if you're speaking what weighs more on photons, light would weigh more.
Did you read the notes?
A little. Well, that also came off my head, too.
So that's your theory. I put together all the notes, and you're just throwing out theories before you get into the notes.
Well, it's before we dig deep.
Yeah. Which, yeah. Spoiler. You're right. Anyway, I'll skip that previous one. I brought a little silly dad pun in there. All right, fine, I'll say it. So, light, what weighs more, light or shadow? Sounds like a heavy subject, and I don't think our answer is going to be any lighter. Get it? No?
Yeah.
Good, then I don't have to explain it. That's just as funny, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I just straight up Googled what weighs more, light or shadow. And I also threw the question into ChatGPT, which I know the whole AI thing is super controversial right now, but I feel like it's a great tool to jump off from. Just like Wikipedia. There's the people have always been controversial about Wikipedia. It's a tool, and it's a jumping off point. Where did I have this in here? All right, I'll just keep reading how I put my notes together here. Both of those AI responses said essentially, bro, why are you even asking this? A light photon does not have any weight, has no resting mass in which to weigh. But light photons have momentum, though. Weight is the gravitational force with which the Earth or any planetary body, or any body, actually, any kind of a solid matter. I think solid matter. Maybe not just solid matter. Anyway, everything has an exertion of gravity. From the tiniest thing to the biggest thing. Obviously, planets have mega gravity power, but
like stars.
Right. But a floating rock out in space, an asteroid, does have a pull of gravity, but it's not much compared to everything else.
Comets, they do have mass since they have tails of stuff.
Right. We'll get into what the tails are here in a little bit. But everything has just the tiniest bit of a pool of gravity, just because that's how physics works.
Everything has mass, and if everything has mass, everything's going to have a little bit of gravity.
Right, exactly. Just a tiny bit.
At least a little.
Well, almost imperceptible. Well, to our consciousness, it's imperceptible. But on like a quantum level, you can see it. It's measurable. We'll say that. All right. So those AI things didn't say those words exactly. I took what they said and turned it into that. And that's an AI usage lesson. Read it, reread it, rewrite it using your own words. Got it? Mm-hmm. So if you do a book report, throw some info into ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, or there's a bunch of them.
I do like to use reference things. I won't copy exactly it, but if I do, like, say I'm writing about like an article, I'll put the text says quotes.
Right.
Because I don't want to plagiarize anything.
That's bad. Not only do you get in trouble, but kind of look dumb if you don't do your own thing. Kinda. But, I mean, do people worry about that? I don't think a lot of people worry about that. Anyway, don't plagiarize. That's the point.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Light photons have momentum and energy. They're literally moving at the speed of light. So that means they do exert a force. That's how they push solar sails in space. You ever see a solar sail? You ever see a picture of a solar sail? It's gold on one side and then silver on the other, so it looks like a spray painted gold sort of aluminum foil situation. And well, I'll get into it. A solar sail basically catches the light photons and is able to propel the sail and whatever is attached to the sail. Like a boat sail catching wind. But this is in space catching light. Freaking crazy. That's how I feel. It's just totally bananas.
I guess that's why it's called a solar sail.
Right, because it catches the light.
Instead of wind.
Not just sun, though. They're working on solar sails, or they're working on tools, lasers, that will shoot light produce laser light to project, or to exert force on the sail. Which is crazy, too. The whole thing is just mind-blowing. I love it. But how does that work? How in the world does a light photon push a solar sail? How can light push something, right?
Yeah.
I feel like this is a very good and basic way to help understand how energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Or everyone's favorite equation.
E equals mc squared.
Yep, that's the one. That's kind of what's happening. So energy equals mass times the speed of light. So you have even just a fist-sized rock hurtling through space, and it's going to have tremendous force. And even down to the minuscule scale that a light photon exerts a force. Any atom would exert a force. A tiny stone would exert a force. If there's something that can catch the stone or be impervious to the stone that is hurtling thousands and thousands of miles per hour through space, or kilometers, whatever. We'll get into that. And it could be caught, then it would exert a force to move that object. Huge object. All right, let's break all that down to hopefully understand it a little better. Let's think of energy as the power or ability to do something, like making a light bulb shine or a car move. Mass is the stuff that makes everything up, like the matter in a ball or a book. The C in E equals mc squared stands for the speed of light, which is incredibly fast, approximately 300,000 kilometers per second, or 186,000 miles per second. The speed of light. The speed of...
It takes 8 minutes for the sun's light to reach the earth.
Right.
Oh.
8 light minutes. Yeah. Crazy. So that's, takes 8 minutes. And that's something to think about too. If for some reason the sun just winked out, the light just turned off, all the fusion just stopped at once, we wouldn't know it for 8 minutes.
But the sun dying out won't happen for many, 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 many more years.
Yeah, lots of generations from now.
At least 100.
Squaring it means multiplying it by itself, and it's a very big number. So, just so you know, c squared equals mc squared. Even as impossibly small and weightless as a single photon is, it can still have effects similar to having mass. In a sense, a photon's energy acts like mass in certain situations, like in gravitational fields or radiation pressure. But technically, it still weighs nothing. Here's how they push something like a solar sail. When sunlight, or any light, shines on a solar sail, because the solar sail is so light, doesn't weigh much, using the gravity of the Earth. Photons bombard its reflective surface. Each photon transfers a tiny bit of its momentum to the sail when it hits. If the photon is absorbed, it transfers all of its momentum. If it's reflected, it gives up even more because it changes direction, like bouncing a ball off a wall. It's a weird concept. So if it just goes into it, then it pushes it, and the object has absorbed all of the momentum. But if the photon bounces off of it, it's depending on the reflection of the surface, the reflectability. So, like the light in here, the light that's hitting the curtain here, we are perceiving it because some of the light bounces back off and into our eyes.
Curtains like these absorb most of the light.
Right. And lighter colors, like the not quite white of the wall here.
Or like transparent curtains.
Well, they would go through.
Yeah.
But the more reflective, the more mirror-like a surface is, the greater the exertion on it because more is able to reflect off of it. I think that's how it goes. One photon's push. Whoa. Getting choked up. One photon's push is ridiculously small. Sorry. But when you have trillions upon trillions of them hitting a massive, lightweight sail, that force adds up. Over time, it can accelerate a spacecraft to incredible speeds. It's truly mind-blowing how many photons of light the sun spits out constantly. Let's try to imagine it on a scale we can understand. Let's take a golf ball. And I did think about finding a golf ball, having it here. But you can imagine a golf ball, right?
Mm.
If we could attach a string to the center of all the dimples on the golf ball and stretch them straight out from the center, we would have a golf ball that has an extremely bad hair day. Anyway, but no, imagine all those strings are the paths of light, photons shooting away from the sun in the universe somewhere. The dimples on a golf ball represent a lot of different directions. But obviously, light photons are way smaller than the width of a string. That's a near inconceivable amount of directions that a near inconceivable amount of photons blast off from the sun at the speed of light. So we know the sun is a sphere. So the width of a light photon, which we can't see with just our eyeballs, but every one of those represents a direction. It's that tiny across the entire sphere of the sun. That's how the light works out from a sphere. Incredible. The pressure of all those photons exert on the solar sail or any object really is called radiation pressure. It's the same concept behind why comets develop tails that point away from the sun. The sunlight is literally pushing the particles away. So it produces the tail behind the ball. That is the comet. Ball or whatever.
It is, like sun, comet, the tail is going to always be away from the sun.
Right.
Unless it is farther from the sun, then it won't have a tail. Like in the elliptical orbit,
yeah.
If it's over here, it's not going to have a tail, but if it's over here, it's going to have a tail.
Awesome. I love it.
I mean, we started learning about those in science.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Solar sails work best over time because they keep accelerating as long as photons are hitting them. No need for fuel, no engine burns, just constant gentle pressure adding up in the vacuum of space. So how fast can they go? Near Earth, the sunlight's radiation pressure can accelerate a solar sail by about 9 micronewtons per square meter. Which most of that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what, I know what a square meter is, but I don't know the force of a micronewton. That sounds tiny, but in space, there's no air resistance or friction, so even small pushes add up. Over time, a solar sail could potentially reach speeds of hundreds of thousands of kilometers per hour or hundreds of millions of miles per year. The Icaros mission by Japan Space Agency, JAXA, in 2010 demonstrated solar sailing and hit about 100,000 kilometers per hour, or around 60,000 miles per hour. Insane. Insane speeds. The Breakthrough Starshot project is aiming for 20% the speed of light. That's 60,000 kilometers per second, or 37,000 miles per second. 37 miles away. That's crazy. They're doing this using powerful lasers to push tiny sails attached to nanoprobes. If they succeed, these tiny spacecraft could reach Proxima Centauri, the closest star system, in just over 20 years. Right. That's so far away. But how are they going to know? Because it takes, pretty sure, I don't know if it's one way or if it's a round trip, but to communicate with the robots that are on Mars, I believe it's 17 minutes. I think that's the total, maybe. You send a signal out like just the up button on a control, move forward. So the signal has to go out and travel for minutes. And then from there, it receives a signal, does the command, and sends back the fact that it did the command. And I believe it takes 17 minutes for that transaction. So you're like, move forward. You guys want some coffee? You can probably get a couple bites of sandwich while we're waiting on it to let us know that it moved forward.
They're also incredibly slow.
The robots? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to take a while, so you don't want them to go too far. You're like, okay, move forward. And the wheel just goes, cook. And now you have to wait. Did you cook? 17 minutes later. And Voyager 1 is out of the heliosphere of the solar system. You know what that means? The Voyager satellite that was sent into space in the 70s, I believe. I'm going to have to get all this information, or I have to come back to this or something. But the heliosphere of the solar system is the edge of the influence of the sun on the objects around it. Voyager is past that, and they're still getting signals from that. I don't know how long that takes.
I think you're thinking of Voyager 2, because that's the one that got pictures of like Neptune and Uranus and stuff, right?
Yeah. No, Voyager 1's out there too. It's got a gold record.
I thought only Voyager 2 is out there.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. That's fine. I'll be wrong. But anyway, whichever one it is beyond the heliosphere, still sending signals. But I don't know how long it takes for them to go back and forth on that signal. But if this thing is going to travel for 20 years to get out to Proxima Centauri, is it going to take 20 years for us to know it's there? You're like, hello, Proxima Centauri. And now you have to wait a generation of people before you get it to say, yeah, we're here. So people retire. And you're waiting for this thing to come back with just a message.
Yeah.
But it's happening. Humans have to do something. All right, so what's the limit of building up all that speed on a solar sail? Theoretically, as long as the sail keeps catching photons or laser beams and it's super light with minimal drag, there's no hard speed limit besides the greatest speed limit that we know in physics, period. The speed of light. As far as we understand, everything that we've studied, nothing can go faster than the speed of light. That is the speed limit of the universe. 299,792 kilometers per second. Or the speed limit of this simulation that we're in.
How fast would black holes go, though?
We'll get into black holes someday. I don't think it's a hole. It doesn't go somewhere. It's just dense gravity. The stars collapsed. So then you have this dense amount of material, matter. And everything just keeps getting pulled into this dense thing of matter, and it just keeps building up more matter. It's not a hole. Looks like a hole, because light can't even get out. But it's just this solid bit of stuff.
Technically, it's like a sphere of stuff.
It would be, because it's spinning too. That's my theory. We'll get into black holes at some point in our career here. But practical things, like the sail material. Well, back to solar sails here, going at that speed. Practical things, like the sail material breaking down, or the craft veering off course because of the pull of gravity from something else. And I assume you have to calculate in the light hitting from other light sources. But unless Proxima Centauri is the only other light source. Anyway, considering the actual physics of the material, going at that speed, their only setback would be the material itself. So it would be crazy hard to reach that speed without the material just disintegrating from whatever it's blowing through. All right. All that is incredible. It's amazing. It's truly awesome. But how much pressure does a single light photon exert on anything? Again, I asked ChatGPT for some help. I asked, how many foot-pounds of pressure would a single light photon exert on a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter piece of solar sail? And boy, did it deliver. It broke it down into some mathematical equations I have no hope of understanding. Crazy symbols in there. I never got into math that much. There's weird triangles and there's like backward threes. I don't know. There's weird symbols to represent different mathematical equations that I don't know. But I'm going to try and parse out the other information and explain it. Hopefully. All right. Different colors of light have different wavelengths, which I'm pretty sure if broken down enough, that would mean different colors on the spectrum of light would exert different amounts of force. ChatGPT chose to explain how many foot-pounds of pressure a green photon of light would exert. Green is about the middle ground on the light spectrum. You know, Roy G. Biv, and the G being the green right in the middle of the light spectrum. So it's a good middle ground. But no one ever talks about indigo, do they? You know anyone who talks about indigo? No one ever says, like, indigo is my favorite color. No, it's either blue or purple. No one even says violet. My favorite color is indigo. But, you know what the indigo children are?
It sounds ominous.
Well, could be. A little pseudoscience in there. Might be. I don't think they're quite cryptid level, but sometime we'll talk about the indigo children.
They sound like they could be a group of cryptids. Or like
Black-eyed children.
paranormal something.
We'll get into it. It's a whole thing. All right. So photons have momentum, and that momentum is transferred when the photon hits the sail. If it's reflected like a mirror, you double the momentum transfer. But that's impulse, not continuous force. To calculate force, we need momentum per time. For one photon, the time is how fast it's interacting, which is basically instantaneous in this case. So rather than a force, it's better described as a tiny impulse. From here, ChatGPT explained that I asked for foot-pounds of pressure, so it did some more equations. Again, I can only assume these things are correct and that I'm conveying accurate data here. So here I'll say, like in the SpongeBob voice, a few equations later. So 1 photon of green light reflecting off a 1 centimeter squared solar sail delivers roughly 5.9 times 10 to the negative 19 foot-pounds of impulse energy. So what you see there, you're reading in the notes, means 0.19 okay, of foot-pounds of impulse energy. So that's it. So it's barely a breath. It's not even a breath of pressure that the light photon is pushing on something the size of your thumbnail. That's what one does. Not even that, actually. And then it did some other kind of mathematical digital voodoo and came up with, if you had 1 trillion photons per second, you'd only get 5.9 times 10 to the negative 7 foot-pounds per second. So that's 0.7059, which still, yeah, you can't even feel it in a breath on your thumbnail. But with massive numbers of photons, like from the sun or powerful lasers, it adds up over time. But then I was like, no, ChatGPT, I still don't get it. Explain it like I'm 5. No, actually, I said, how many foot-pounds of pressure can a single sunlight photon exert on a scale on Earth? We want to understand the weight of this happening, right? In a way that we can understand it. On a scale on Earth, you get on it and you weigh whatever pounds. Simple. Your exertion of gravity on that measuring device. And that's what I wanted to know from the beginning. A few equations later. It had to spread 1 photon's impulse evenly over a length of 1 second. A single sunlight photon hitting and reflecting off a scale would exert an average force of 6 times 10 to the negative 28 pounds force. So that's 0.2806 pounds. Again, it's barely a breath exerting on this sail for a single light photon. You measured it over a period of 1 second. But you got to do it trillions of times. Again, what? It said for context, a paperclip weighs about 0.5 grams or 0.0011 foot-pounds. You would need 1.8 times 10 to the 25th photons per second. So that's 1.825 zeros. That many photons in 1 second just to equal the weight of a paperclip on the scale. Paperclips, you put it in the palm of your hand and you barely perceive the weight of 1 paperclip. And to equal that amount, you would need 1.825 zeros of photons to exert the force of a single paperclip. What? Right?
Photons are so light.
Good one. And you didn't even know you were doing.
I kind of knew.
You would have to be impossibly sensitive to perceive that pressure on you. It's pretty insignificant on that scale, but if you spread that out over a large area, it is only slightly more noticeable. So check this out. It has been estimated that the city of Chicago weighs approximately 300 pounds more on a sunny day due to the pressure of sunlight falling on it. Still pretty insignificant compared to all the weight of all the structures across the city, but still pretty cool that somebody did that calculation.
How do we know that it's more?
But I don't know. Somebody took all the time to be like, okay, there's X number of square footage of ground, and there's X number of square footage of building extruded this far, and the sun's hitting all the buildings in this direction, and all the things. And we can only assume that there's this many cars, and so somebody's like, and just figure out all these calculations, and we're like, 100 pounds.
I mean, it probably weighs more on like high noon because there's going to be
no shadows
or less shadow.
Right. Because the city of Chicago is not in a point where the sun would be exact zenith above the state or the city. Chicago's not a state. It's a state of mind. Anyway. All this time, we've been talking about light, this, and photon that, and foot-pounds of pressure, and blah, 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 blah. We haven't mentioned shadows in real talk yet. Well, shadows are the absence of light. You said that in the beginning. The absence of all that pressure, which is not much. However imperceptible it might be. So that means, to answer our question, what weighs more, light or shadow? The answer is light weighs more. If you were to break it down into all those crazy calculations and all that, because shadow is the absence of light.
So it's not going to have any photons, which
right.
Photons weigh 0.2806 pounds. Then shadow is going to be 0.0.
Yeah, pretty much. And if you want to break it down even more, like, depending on, if you're closer to if the light source is close to you, then the shadow is stronger. Or when the shadow is dispersed, there's different weights at the dispersal of the shadow. So the heavier, darker shadow would weigh, well, I mean, it's not going to weigh less, but there's less light exertion in the darkest of the shadow.
Mm.
Took me way longer to say it that way than I should have. Light weighs more physically. Broken down to all those wild equations and thought experiments, light weighs more than shadow. But let's flip this from the physical to the figurative, metaphorical, the emotional weight of light versus shadow. It's the opposite, right? So when you're in the light, you feel hopeful, you feel happy, you literally feel lighter.
Like the day that it was finally sunny here, rather than a sheet of clouds, I was more happy to be outside in the sun.
Right, hopeful. You don't fear anything, you have a pep in your step. And
feels nice, good.
Right. And when it's dark outside, it's fearful, it's shadow, feels oppressive, feels like something's gonna get you.
Things lurking and watching you.
Right.
Why sometimes when I'm like up at night and I have to use the bathroom or something, I like run back into my bed because I feel like something's gonna grab me.
Yeah, right. Shadows feel heavier for most people, but there might be some vampires out there that fear the light. But I think for the most part, light feels lighter and shadows feel heavier. And we just explained why, because light feels lighter, it's hopeful, it's light is hope, light is the known, light is associated with good things, whereas throughout history, shadow or darkness has always been associated with the unknown, which can trigger feelings of anxiety, confusion, sadness, grief, or hopelessness.
Like in The Lion King, when Mufasa says, everything the light touches is ours, but in where the hyenas live, it's dark and spooky.
Spooky, foreboding, just
Ominous.
doesn't feel good. Darkness is frequently, even that's a perfect example in the story sense, frequently used in literature, art, and culture to symbolize negative emotions, evil, or foreboding. The term darkness is often used metaphorically to describe difficult or challenging times, which can further reinforce the association of darkness with heaviness and negativity. And physically speaking and chemically speaking, in the human experience, when it's dark, our bodies produce melatonin. So when it's dark, it's telling our bodies to begin relaxing. Melatonin is a hormone that prepares us for sleep. This can lead to feelings of sleepiness, grogginess, and even a sense of heaviness or lethargy. The darkness is telling you to settle down. Feels like a weight because it's causing you to feel sleepy and groggy and time to relax.
That's why when people that live in Antarctica or something, they, like, when it's a period of most darkness, are gonna feel more sleepy, tired.
Right. If you have days of dark, then you just always feel tired. I'm pretty sure the people that are out there have some sort of daylight kind of system. They turn the lights on, everything's brighter, and then when it's supposed to be nighttime, they try to shut everything down into a calming sense. But if you have 3 months of some light out there, I've never experienced that. I would be interested in experiencing it. The light it's always like twilight out, even in the middle of darkness, or in the middle of what we would presume.
Like the darkest it's gonna get is sunset.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would love to experience it.
It'd be odd. I think I'd get me some of these curtains.
Right, of course.
On 10 for my window during nighttime, so I can go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
And not go insane for 3 months.
Physically, it may feel like shadows are weighing us down, but in reality, it's the light that is exerting just the tiniest bit of pressure on us. Isn't that crazy? And that's how this episode went. That's kind of the conclusion.
Yeah. Physically, the light weighs more. Psychologically,
shadows weigh more. Awesome. Love it. All right. So here's our, we don't have a real script for the outro yet, but we have Spotify up and running. I'll have to check the other podcast things and make sure we're there. We're also on YouTube in the visual version of the show. We are Bring Questions on X, formerly known as Twitter. All of our links can be found on linktr.ee/BOTQS, or I'm pretty sure, and actually try it, sort of linktree.com/BOTQS. And at this point, we have lots of topics that we know we want to cover and finding more every time we record. Talking about the Indigo Children. And who else knows whatever we were talking about in there that might trigger some other question that we want to answer.
I got some questions from this.
Right.
That will cause more and more episodes.
And put them in the doc that we have.
Because the more things that we do, the more questions we'll get from these.
Oh, yeah.
And the more episodes.
Yep.
And then it's just a continuous cycle.
That's what it's going to be for a while. But I think at some point in the future, we'll open it up to listeners to submit questions for us to study and attempt to answer.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to do that yet. Maybe through a Patreon, or maybe just straight up through the socials.
Or through YouTube, they could comment questions.
Yep, for sure. And that's it. We brought on another question, and we answered it the best we can with the knowledge that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Until next time.
Yep.
Bye for now. A production of Wayward Things Network.